Yay, live. Welcome to Double Chin Tuesday, I guess. Yeah, too many Christmas cookies and candies. It is April 2nd. I've been pretty busy. We had another funeral in the family, and I had to work a couple of days, and they were long days. And then I got to get caught, but I'm back to reading today. Chapter 7. This is Max Lucado's book. It's called Everyone Needs a Miracle. He Still Moves Stones. And chapter 7 is A Crazy Hunch and a High Hope. Genuine Gestures of Faith. Genuine gestures of faith. How about the fact that the sun rose and the sky's beautiful. It's really nice out there today. So today we start with a verse, Mark 5, verse 24 through 34. So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed Jesus and pushed very close around him. Among them was a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. I love this story. She had suffered very much from many doctors and had spent all the money she had. But instead of improving, she was getting worse. When the woman heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his coat because she thought, if I can just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Instantly, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed from her disease. At once, Jesus felt power, went right out of him. So he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" His followers said, "Look at how many people are pushing against you, and you ask, 'Who touched me?'" That would be kind of weird. But Jesus continued looking around to see who had touched him. The woman, knowing that she was healed, came and fell at Jesus' feet, shaking with fear. She told him the whole truth. Jesus said to her, "Dear woman, you are made well because you believed. Go in peace, be healed of your disease." Oh. And now, because Jesus isn't with us, I always say a prayer. "Oh, Jesus, but if the shadow of your cloak would fall over us, we would be healed." Daughter, your faith has made you well. A clock for Christmas is not the kind of gift that thrills an 8-year-old boy. But I said thank you and took it to my bedroom, put it on the nightstand, and plugged it in. Probably was not stolen by your brothers and sisters and ruined in 2 hours. I don't know who that would have happened to with the very first transistor radio for her birthday. Ruined 2 hours. I was lucky if any birthday present lasted longer than 2 hours. Hazards of a large family. There are hazards. It was a square-faced bulova. It didn't have moving numbers, but it had rotating hands. The kind they're banning from schools because children are not intelligent enough to read them. It didn't play tapes or CDs, but over the years it developed a slight, soothing hum that could be heard when the room was quiet. White noise. Today you can buy clocks that sound like rain when it's time to sleep, and like your mother when it's time to wake up. But not this one. Its alarm could make the dogs howl. Forget snooze buttons. Just pick it up and chunk it across the... It was a Neanderthal model. It wouldn't net 50 cents at a garage sale in this day of digital clocks and musical alarms. But still, over time, I grew attached to it. People don't usually get sentimental about electric clocks, but I did about this one, not because of its accuracy. It's always a bit slow, nor the hum, which I didn't mind, I liked it because of the light. You see, this clock glowed in the dark. All day, every day, it soaked up the light. It sponged up the sun. The hands were little sticks of ticks and time and sunshine. And when the night came, the clock was ready. And I flicked off the light to sleep. The little clock flickered on its light and shined. Not much light, but when your world is dark, just a little seems like a lot. Somewhat like the light a woman got when she met Jesus. We don't know her name, but we know her situation. Her world was midnight black. Grope in the dark and hope for help black. Bleak. Read these two verses and see what I mean. A large crowd followed Jesus and pushed very close around him. Among them was a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered very much from many doctors and had spent all the money she had, but instead of improving, she was getting worse. She was a bruised reed, bleeding for 12 years, suffered very much, spent all the money she had, and getting worse. A chronic menstrual disorder, a perpetual issue of blood. Such a condition would be difficult for any woman of any era, but for a Jewess, nothing could be worse. No part of her life was left unaffected. Sexually, she could not be touched by her husband. Maternally, she could not bear children. Domestically, anything she touched was considered unclean. No washing dishes, no sweeping floors. Spiritually, she was not allowed to enter the temple. She was physically exhausted and socially ostracized. She had sought help under the care of many doctors. Verse 26 in the New International Version. The Talmud gives no fewer than 11 cures for such a condition. No doubt she had tried them all. Some were legitimate treatments, others, such as carrying the ashes of an ostrich egg in a linen cloth, were hollow superstitions. I think so. She had spent all she had. To dump financial strain on top of the physical strain is to add insult to injury. A friend battling cancer told me that the hounding of the creditors who demand payments for ongoing medical treatment is just as devastating as the pain. Instead of getting better, she grew worse. She was a bruised reed. She awoke daily in a body no one wanted. She is down to her last prayer, and on the day we encounter her, she's about to pray it. By the time she gets to Jesus, he is surrounded by people. He's on his way to help the daughter of Jairus, the most important man in the community. What are the odds that he will interrupt an urgent mission with a high official to help the likes of her? Very few. But what are the odds that she will survive if she doesn't take a chance? Fewer still. So she takes a chance. If I can just touch his clothes, she thinks, I will be healed. Risky decision. To touch him, she will have to touch the people. If one of them recognizes her, hello, rebuke, goodbye, cure. But what choice does she have? She has no money, no clout, no friends, no solutions. All she has is a crazy hunch that Jesus can help and a high hope that he will. Maybe that's all you have, a crazy hunch and a high hope. You have nothing to give, but you are hurting, and all you have to offer him is your hurt. Maybe that has kept you from coming to God. Oh, you've taken a step or two in his direction. But then you saw the other people around him. They seemed so clean, so trim and fit in their faith, and when you saw them, they blocked your view of him, so you stepped back. If that describes you, note carefully. Only one person was commended that day for having faith. It wasn't a wealthy giver. It wasn't a loyal follower. It wasn't an acclaimed teacher. It was a shame-struck, penniless outcast who clutched onto her hunch that he could and her hope that he would. Which, by the way, isn't a bad definition of faith. A conviction that he can and a hope that he will. Sounds similar to the definition of faith given by the Bible. Without faith, no one can please God. Anyone who comes to God must believe that he is real and that he rewards those who truly want to find him. Not too complicated, is it? Faith is the belief that God is real and that God is good. Faith is not, oh, excuse me, and I am not sleep deprived. Man, I slept like a log. Faith is not a mystical experience or a midnight vision or a voice in the forest. It is a choice to believe that the one who made it all hasn't left it all, and that he still sends light into shadows and responds to gestures of faith. There was no guarantee, of course. She'd hoped he'd respond. She longed for it, but she didn't know if he would. All she knew was that he was there and that he was good. That's faith. Faith is not the belief that God will do what you want. Faith is the belief that God will do what is right. Blessed are the dirt poor, nothing to give, trapped in a corner, destitute, diseased. Jesus said, "For theirs is the kingdom of heaven." That was Matt 5, verse 6, but Max Lucado's translation. He posts that in parentheses. God's economy is upside down, or right side up, and ours is upside down, parentheses again. God says that the more hopeless your circumstance, the more likely your salvation. The greater your cares, the more genuine your prayers. The darker the room, the greater the need for light. Which takes us back to his clock. When it was daylight, I never appreciated my little Belova's capacity to glow in the dark, but as the shadows grew, so did my gratitude. A healthy lady never would have appreciated the power of a touch of the hem of his robe, but this woman was sick, and when her dilemma met his dedication, a miracle occurred. Her part in the healing was very small. All she did was extend her arm through the crowd. If only I can touch him. What's important is not the form of the effort, but the fact of the effort. The fact is, she did something. She refused to settle for sickness another day and resolved to make a move. Healings begin when we do something. Healing begins when we reach out. Healing starts when we take a step. God's help is near and always available, but is only given to those who seek it. Nothing results from apathy. It's true. Maybe it might foster some more sadness, which that would be right in the devil's playground. The great work in this story is the mighty healing that occurred, but the great truth is that the healing began with her touch. She felt it, he felt it. With that small, courageous gesture, she experienced Jesus' tender power. Compared to God's part, our part is minuscule but necessary. We don't have to do much, but we do have to do something. Write a letter, ask forgiveness, call a counselor, confess, call mom, visit a doctor, be baptized, feed a hungry person, pray, teach, go. Do something that demonstrates faith. For faith with no effort is no faith at all. God will respond. He has never rejected a genuine gesture of faith. Never. God honors radical risk-taking faith. When arks are built, lives are saved. When soldiers march, Jerichos tumble. When staffs are raised, seas still open. When a lunch is shared, thousands are fed. And when a garment is touched, whether by the hand of an anemic woman in Galilee or by the prayers of a beggar in Bangladesh, Jesus stops. He stops and responds. This week, a curious thing was being passed around in social media, and it was a tribe of indigenous people somewhere in the Middle East, I believe it was, and they were like doing a prayer dance. I don't know if it was to Jesus or just to God, but they were doing a prayer dance, and it was actually parting the seas, just like back in Moses' time. It's amazing. Mark can tell you when this woman touched Christ, two things happened that happened nowhere else in the Bible. He recorded them both. First, Jesus heals before he knows it. The power left automatically and instantaneously. It's as if the Father short-circuited the system, and the divinity of Christ was a step ahead of the humanity of Christ. Her need summoned his help. No neon lights or loud shouts, no razzle-dazzle, no fanfare, no hoopla, no splash, just help. She believed in God's Son, and God rewarded that. Just like my dark room brought the light out of my clock, our dark world brings out the light of God. Second, he calls her daughter. Daughter, your faith has made you well. It's the only time Jesus calls any woman anywhere daughter. Wow. So God was speaking through Jesus. Imagine how that made her feel. Who could remember the last time she received a term of affection? Who knew the last time kind eyes had met hers? I want to hug her now. Leo Tolstoy, the great Russian writer, tells of the time he was walking down the street and passed a beggar. Tolstoy reached into his pocket to give the beggar some money, but his pocket was empty. Those really genius guys, they were notorious for having mental pauses. The genius mind can't remember common things like a little money in your pocket. Tolstoy turned to the man and said, I'm sorry, my brother, but I have nothing to give. The beggar brightened and said, you have given me more than I asked for. You have called me brother. To the loved, a word of affection is a morsel. To the love-starved, a word of affection can be a feast. Oh, my heavens. We have a feast just on our tongue. Just if we speak an affectionate word. Why don't we use that more often? And Jesus gave this woman a banquet. Tradition holds that she never forgot what Jesus did. Legend states that she stayed with Jesus and followed him as he carried his cross up Calvary. Some believe she was Veronica, the woman who walked the road to the cross with him. And when the sweat and blood were stinging his eyes, she wiped his forehead. And the image of Jesus was transferred onto her cloth. She at an hour of great need received his touch, and he at an hour of pain received hers. We don't know if the legend is true, but we know it could be. And I don't know if the same has happened to you, but I know it can. Yeah, the same has happened to us. Don was healed of his cancer. And at the same time, I saw my brother who was a believer and he was a good guy and he helped people. But God took him home to heal him. And Jim, and Muggsy can attest to that, Jim, he just died a little over 2 weeks ago. That was my brother-in-law. Pneumonia, same thing that took my cousin's husband just this last funeral. Another good guy, very religious. His children told a story at his funeral and they said, if you misbehaved in church, you got to come home and sit in the corner with a cross and kneel for a specific amount of time for misbehaving in church. Wow. I wonder how many people still discipline like that. Remind you that you owe God great reverence, not idle chitter, chatter, chattel. God's not chaff. So he was a great guy too. We prayed for all of them. And only Don was healed. And I struggle with that. You're reluctant to tell people who are hurting like that your husband was healed because you know theirs was not. And the only conclusion I can come up with is God's not done with Don yet. He's still got something great to accomplish. Otherwise, God probably would have taken him home to be healed too. So, in the interim, I really enjoy the fact that my husband was healed. And in the interim, I'm sure that lady in the Bible enjoyed that she was healed. And she could follow the healer in the company of others. I guess don't question blessings, just accept them. Well, that's all I got for you today. I'm glad to be back. I love you guys. I hope these funerals stop in my family pretty soon. It gets you down a little bit, but I'm trying to stay positive and stay up there and uh, give my sadness to Jesus, and He always cheers me up. Okay, ending the stream. God, bye. God bless you. I love all of you. End stream. Didn't work. End stream. This time it's working. End.